Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gail Carson, your host for Women in Business, a show that celebrates women and their accomplishments as entrepreneurs or senior managers. As a woman business owner for over 5 decades, I take great pride in bringing these interviews to you. My guest today is Rita Craig. She is a leadership expert and president of the Florida Speakers Association. She talks about the transition from corporate executive to entrepreneur. Welcome, Rita. How are you today?
I'm just fine. Thank you. Welcome. And it's a great pleasure to be on your show.
Well, thank you. So, tell us a little bit about your business. What does Rita Craig do?
Well, I have the pleasure of working in a business I am passionately involved in and just love. My company is called Top Tier Leadership, and it's a human resources consulting and speaking business. I primarily focus on building individual and organizational success. Now, when people ask me about what does that mean, individual success, I strongly focus on building leadership bench strength, which is huge today because there's so many baby boomers who are moving on to retirement, and there aren't always a lot of successors to step in. I also provide coaching services and a variety of customized solutions that will equip leaders with the skills they need to succeed. Now, on the organizational level, my company is often called in to work with leadership teams to design vision, mission, and value statements. And quite frankly, I am thoroughly amazed repeatedly at how many companies don't have a blueprint for success. And so many rely on just being lucky and to be having the opportunity to help them really map out a strategy to have quantum leaps in success is something that I have a lot of passion around. And you mentioned the speaking business. I must say that I love getting up in front of a group, whether it's as a keynote or a facilitator. There's really nothing like the energy in the audience. So as a speaker, it is all about the audience, and I have a lot of fun making sure that whatever the message is that they want delivered, that I'll be able to do it in a fun and influential way.
You know, a lot of people are considering speaking today, even though it still is the number one fear that anyone has, and all of us who are speakers wonder, how can that be? But you mentioned, that you came from the human resource field and that's what your company really is about. So how long have you been in the human resource field? And it's really, I think, changed a lot in the last many years because it's gone into more than just benefits and vacations and workman's comp and all those kinds of things to a lot of other things. So how long have you been in it?
Actually, I am celebrating my 42nd year working in this field, and you're absolutely right. It has changed quite a bit over those years. I can recall when I first started, it was called the personnel department, and we would fondly say, if you can smile and file, you can work in HR, or you can work in personnel at the time. But quite frankly, over the years, like many other professions, HR has really worked hard at earning a seat at the table. And today, it truly is a strategic partner in helping organizations be successful. Because at the end of the day, you can have the exact same equipment, the same building, the same materials as your competitors, but it's the people. It's really the people that make the difference. And so
Well,
HR has a great opportunity to be a part of that drive for success.
it's interesting because I used to do a program called How to Take a Leadership Role in Your Organization, and it was aimed at HR people because they kind of sat at the back table. They didn't really make a lot of noise, and they weren't considered part of the strategic leadership portion of the company. So it's nice to know that they're being brought to the main table at this point. But what made you transition from working in corporate America to being an entrepreneur of your own business?
Well, after working in the corporate world at a job and a company I cared deeply about, quite frankly, I realized that there was only one job I wanted, and that was a job that my boss had. And he was only a few years older, and reality set in that I would be stuck in my position. And while I had very descriptive, or excuse me, very wonderful opportunities to move on to other departments or other functions. HR was my passion. And so after finally thinking about it for several years, I decided I really needed to take that leap. And I felt I needed to do two things. One, I needed to a greater challenge because I felt stuck. And two, I had this entrepreneurial bug that kept biting me. So after 3 years of thinking about making a move, I quite frankly shocked everyone, resigned, started my own business. And my former employer is a client, and I'm so grateful for that because they're really like family to me. So I always say I cut my teeth in corporate. I learned so much of what I know today having worked for a great company, and that has enabled me to go off and do what I do today.
That's wonderful. Of course, you know, I guess you could have made another transition, and that would be you could have gone to another company as head of HR, but maybe that was not something that was in your head to do.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because right when I quit my job, I got contacted by a very large bank in Miami asking me if I would like to come on board as executive vice president. And I went to 2 interviews, and then my husband and I sat down and I looked him in the eye and I said, I mapped out a plan to start my own business. I could have stayed where I was at. What am I doing? But I think it was, that little voice on one shoulder saying, what on earth are you doing? You're quitting this big job. And the other voice saying, you go, girl. Go. Don't live with regrets and go after what you're looking for. And
Well,
so
that's so
finally,
true.
it is. And you know what? I've never done this again in my life, but I sent them a huge bouquet of flowers, thanking them for the interview process and telling them at the end of the day, I had to follow my dream. And I've never looked back.
Isn't that interesting? You've mentioned two things that are like second nature to my heart. One is, of course, I have my other radio show, which is Living Regret Free, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm all about. And you mentioned that. And then, second
Mm-hmm.
of all, sending them flowers, and that's exactly what a classy person does. And that's also what we all talk about. So you've mentioned two things very close to my heart. But you also focus on building what you call bench strength.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? And what do you think is the one characteristic that every leader has to have?
Well, right now, because so many baby boomers are leaving the workforce, it really is leaving a gaping hole in a lot of companies. And I'm often reminded at the particular skills gap that are vacant. And when you look at the talent in organizations, some might look at it and say, gosh, we have a lot of people we can choose from. But when it comes to making a decision, so often leaders tell me, there's nobody here who's really ready. We haven't done a good job of putting together development plans over the years to build the whole bench strength. We might have built only one or two people. So that's what I'm talking about, to really maximize the potential of every single person on the bench. And in terms of leadership, there are a lot of skills talked about, from the ability to effectively communicate and inspire others. But one of the skills I see in my business is the ability to ask compelling questions. And too often, especially in these very time-strapped world that we live in, bosses are quick to tell people what and how to do something instead of asking them questions and getting people to think. And I think that's where you have a lot of the learning, and that's how you create leaders and improve your bench strength, by asking open-ended questions. It's a skill, and it certainly has been a skill that's been mentioned by a lot of the best leaders of our century in terms of what people have to really sharpen up and be good at, and that's asking great questions.
I was going to ask you when you said that about questions, whether or not that was to your people, whether that was to stakeholders, whether that was to your board of directors, or if that's just to yourself. But basically, you're saying everybody. A leader really has to ask herself or himself, what some of the things are that they're dealing with. Also, if there is a board involved and there are shareholders involved, what's the effect on them? And then, of course, as you say, the most important people are the people who are in that company every single day because they really know more of what's going on than the CEO does. I mean, the CEO deals with the big stratosphere, and the worker bees are down there listening to the complaints, seeing what's returned, seeing what the dialogue is, and that's kind of interesting. So, who would you say has been your greatest influence?
Oh, without a doubt, my parents. They met in second grade,
Oh,
fell in
wow, that's
love,
amazing. Yeah.
fell in love, and they married after high school. And quite frankly, they were told not to have any children, and they had 11, and then got a dog.
11 children? You're one of 11 children.
I am. Roger, Nancy, Richard, Arlene, Bruce, Ronald, Rita, Raymond, Rodney, Denise, and Roy. So they're all wonderful. We're a very close knit family, and my father was a very wise, kind, ethical business leader, and he passed away about 5 years ago. And my parents were married 68 years, and I have to tell you, Gail, not one time in my whole life did I ever hear a bad thing that either one said about each other or raised voice? Never. And with all those kids, you have to know it had to be challenging. But those are the kind of role models I grew up in. I fondly say my mother and father had PhDs in love, and they always taught us that it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice, and that you always have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and know you did the right thing and treated people appropriately. So they were
Well,
the
I think
best
that's
role
so
models.
true. I mean, I say, luckily my son says that the best thing that ever happened to him was having my husband and I as his parents, and I feel the same way about my parents. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I really had a wonderful upbringing. Only had one sister, though. So, what was it like with 10 brothers and sisters? I mean, my parents never, I never heard them swear. I never heard one
Mm-hmm.
swear word until I actually got into college.
Mm-hmm.
And they never yelled at each other either, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what was it like? I guess everybody took responsibility for everybody else.
You bet. And of course, I grew up in a household with 14 people because I had two parents. There were 11 kids, and my father's mother, my grandmother, lived with us. So we all had roles and responsibilities. We had to eat in shifts because we had so many activities between school and sports that my parents always said, at least three or four of you had to sit down and you had to talk. You had to turn the TV off. You had to share what your day was like and really always support one another. I think about growing up, and a lot of my friends would hang out here. It seemed like this was, party central or chaos central, I
Well, you had
suppose.
enough people for a football team and a baseball team and a basketball team, so
Oh, and we did. But my friends used to say, "Your mother cooks with army pots." What time did she start cooking dinner? And I said, about 3 o'clock. But you know
yeah.
what? It was always a house full of love, and I just feel so blessed that we had an environment where we were taught to care so much about each other and to care about people. And my parents always talked too about the importance of giving back. That no matter what you do in life, do what you love. Don't chase money, and always take the time to give back in whatever fashion you can.
Well, I guess that's maybe why you went into HR because you had good experience dealing with a lot of people. So, but what would you say, other than the advice that your parents gave you? What was the best business advice you ever received?
Well, I had a really terrific friend, a female business owner, and when I was thinking about leaving my corporate job, and it was a job I loved in a company I love and still do, she gave me some great advice. She said, no matter what you do, don't focus on getting a lot of clients. Get one, do the best job, exceed in whatever they want you to do, and they'll